Tonight is the Greater Sudbury Chamber of Commerce All Candidates Riding Debate. My name is Michael McNamara. I'm Chair of the Board of Directors for the Chamber here in Sudbury and your moderator for this evening. Tonight's event is sponsored by the Sudbury Real Estate Board. Thank you to the Sudbury Real Estate Board for your generous support. Without your support, tonight would not be possible, so thank you very much. Round of applause, please. We hope tonight's event will help you decide how to cast your ballot for a member of the provincial parliament for this upcoming provincial election. Remember, the final decision is yours. We urge you to have your say tonight and ultimately with your vote on June 7th. Let us begin by introducing the candidates and panelists and by outlining the rules of procedure for tonight's event. Seated in alphabetical order by surname is Troy Crowder, David Popescu, David Robinson, David Sylvester, Glenn Thibault, James Wendler, who is not here, and Jamie West and Mila Wong. Thank you, candidates, for joining us. With respect to the panel, it is my pleasure to introduce Ashley Sauvé, President of Sudbury Real Estate Board, David Boyce, Vice President and Wealth Advisor for RBC Dominion and Securities, and Tracy Nutt, President, Service Master of Sudbury and Build North Construction. Assisting me tonight is our timekeeper, Charlene Sissons, our question reviewer, Debbie Nicholson, working hard already reviewing questions, and our floor monitors, Brian Hasty, Syed Raza, and Maddie Scherzinger, who are all members of the Chamber staff. Thank you for being here tonight. The candidates have been briefed on the rules of procedure for tonight's discussions, but I will outline them briefly for the audience. Number one, each candidate will be invited in alphabetical order to address the Assembly for 2 minutes on any topic of their choice. The timekeeper will sound a bell at the 1.5 minute mark to indicate 30 seconds left in each candidate's time period. The microphone will be disconnected at the 2 minute mark, so no going over time. Following the opening remarks, the panelists will pose a total of 3 questions to be answered by each of the candidates. These questions will concern provincial issues of importance to the business community. And the candidates will have a maximum of 1.5 minutes each to respond to each question. The candidates will be asked to respond to these questions in random order. The timekeeper will sound a bell indicating 30 seconds left in the time period, and the microphone will be disconnected at the after 1.5 minutes. Number 3, following the candidate's response to each question, they will have the opportunity to debate the question amongst themselves for a period of 5 minutes. The timekeeper will sound the bell indicating 30 seconds left in the time period. Following the panelists' questions, a public question period will be held where questions addressed to specific candidates will be posed. Any members of the audience wishing to have their question asked, please raise your hand throughout the evening, and our floor monitors will bring you a question sheet. When you are finished writing your question, please raise your hand again, and the floor monitors will come and collect them. Questions that have been submitted electronically to the Chamber by members of the public have already been passed on to the panelists. The questions will be reviewed and posed to the identified candidate. Please identify only one candidate you would like to pose the question to. For these questions, the intended candidate will have a maximum of 1.5 minutes to reply. The timekeeper will sound the bell indicating 30 seconds left in the time period. Finally, following the open question period, each candidate in reverse alphabetical order will have the opportunity for a final 2-minute summation on a topic of their choosing. The timekeeper will ring the bell at the 1.5 minute mark, and the microphone will be disconnected after 2 minutes. Those are the rules. Follow the rules. Now let's begin the night by calling on the candidates, beginning in alphabetical order for their introductory remarks. Mr. Crowder, your opening remarks, please.
Hello. There we go. I'm Troy Crowder, your progressive conservative candidate here in Sudbury. And I'm proud to say the PC party stands as the only real alternative to govern this province with fiscal responsibility. This does not mean, as my opponents would like to say, cuts and job layoffs. that is, for the exception of the CEO of Hydro One. These are scare tactics meant to distract voters from the perils of a flawed fiscal plan that they have. The deficit of the province of Ontario currently stands at $330 billion, an all-time high. Fiscal clarity, accountable management must be returned so the province can be saved. In 2016-17, Ontario was the recipient of $2.3 billion in equalization payments. That is a sad state of affairs for what once was the economic engine of our country. 75,000 plus manufacturing jobs have disappeared since the Liberals were elected to government. My counterparts in the NDP have put forward a plan that simply increases spending and more taxation. This will not return Ontario to prosperity. Only the PC party will respect the taxpayers while pledging to achieve high standards in health care and education they will all expect. Only the PC party pledges to clean up the hydro mess. And only our party is committed to bringing jobs back to Ontario. These are some of the reasons why I have represented myself for the position of MPP in Sudbury. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Mr. Popescu, please.
God's word is most important in politics, in home life, in education, health, all these important areas that will be referred to this evening. God says things like, keep these laws and you shall live. I will prosper you. Violate those laws and I will vomit you out of the land. In the beginning, God proved that our problem is always trying to usurp his authority, make new laws. We're in a situation where we've even legalized perversion, legalized sin. And from the very first page of God's word, you see even that attempt to usurp his authority caused the curse of the ground. That's agriculture, that's productivity. And later on, we see that the jealousy of mankind, where God clearly warned the firstborn what to do and what not to do, just because out of human jealousy, he committed the first murder that further cursed the ground. We need to get back to re-educating our children, our employees, our government to the pages of God's Word.
Thank you, Mr. Popescu. I'm going to have to stop you there, as are strict rules of timekeeping. Dr. Robinson.
Well, hello, everybody. The newspapers are reporting that the Conservatives haven't costed their budget yet. Did you know that? They are not reporting something I wish they would, and that is the Greens have a completely costed budget. And our budget is a little different from the three old parties because we're not promising to borrow money to pay people's electricity bills, as all three other parties are doing. We actually think that all three other parties are fiscally irresponsible, and that includes Troy's party. But as a lot of you know, my main interest is in getting people to look at the elephant in the room, to talk about climate change and to get policies in place to deal with it. You may or may not know that the insurance companies of the world are terrified at the costs of all the flooding and the fires and the disasters that are coming. They're already running behind. They are already getting into trouble financing insurance policies they wrote before climate change kicked in. But they have another bind, and that is they've been investing heavily in carbon-heavy industries. So now, if we stop emitting carbon, they're not going to make enough money to pay their bills. If we don't stop emitting carbon at the rate we're doing, they're going to go bankrupt because the insurance payments they have to make are too big. Now, everybody knows in business that the insurance companies are among the most conservative and careful. What that means is if you're in business and you're worried about business, you maybe want to be listening to them, because they are listening to the scientists and they are recommending the kinds of policies that the Green Party is putting forward. When we ask the question, why don't people do something? Why don't all these companies and all these businesses do something right now, including businesses here in Sudbury? Turns out the answer is that they don't believe governments are serious, and they aren't.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Mr. Sylvester.
Thank you. I'm with None of the Above Party, which is a direct democracy party, which is looking to achieve responsible government through referendums and recall. You know, a friend of mine told me about democracy back in the Roman days, where midterm, the people got to vote on the least popular politician, and he was excommunicated from the country. So there was an incentive not to be the worst anyway. And here we have 4 years where people we've given them full permission to make every decision that affects our lives without considering what we might think. And I know that there's a lot of people that think that, you know, people aren't smart enough to make their own decisions and things of that nature. There's a big ego there. But at the same time, I do think that we got to realize that we can't all be told what to do, like many people within a party are told what to do. And you know, let's face it, there's also the possibility that people can be bought and sold, not just do what they're told. And so I'm looking actually for some accountability within our government that we can initiate. If we feel, enough of us feel, is, you know, basically not keeping their promises. Although I don't hear a lot of promises being made these days. You know, there's just basic ideologies and things of those nature. And in fact, I don't even think our economy is based on a sound footing within mathematics, if you understand what I'm saying. You know, there comes a point in time where, you know, the debt is just too large, and what happens when a country goes bankrupt? I think one of them already did somewhere in the world, and it wasn't very funny. It wasn't very much fun for them, and it didn't help their business at all.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvester. I'm going to have to stop you there. Mr. Thibault.
Thank you. Bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, everyone. Ani. I think it is important for us to first off recognize that we are on the Robinson-Huron Treaty area and show respect to our neighboring Anishinaabe communities and the Wanapitei First Nation as well. Very honored to be here once again and to be part of the debate. I do want to thank the Sudbury Chamber, the Greater Sudbury Chamber, for hosting us. This is an important dialogue amongst all of the parties to have a conversation about what we are all talking about each and every day. I want to thank the candidates as well for coming out. I think this is an important part of democracy, and it's great that we can have this here tonight. I know I'm running because I believe in Sudbury. I believe in our province, and I know I want to continue to be part of a value system that is going to continue to build this province up. We are talking a very stark difference within parties now. We are talking about care versus cuts. And that is something that is very, very important for many of us. Making sure that we invest in families, making sure that we invest in seniors, in our healthcare system, creating jobs, the Ring of Fire. Those are the things that are mattering, that matter to all of us here in Sudbury, in Northern Ontario, and right across the province. I'm very pleased to be part of a party, the Liberal Party, that is bringing forward these values that want to make the necessary changes to continue to help build our province up and to help people. And I look forward to having further debate with our candidate colleagues this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault. Mr. West.
I'd also like to echo the land acknowledgement. It's important that we recognize that we're meeting on Indigenous land that's been protected by First Nations since the beginning. We're currently in the Huron-Robinson Treaty Territory, and the land that we're gathered on is the Atikamekw and Anishinaabe. And as settlers, it's important that we recognize the historic connection to this place. My name is Jamie West, and I'm seeking your vote like the other candidates on June 7th. I'm proud to have been born and raised in Sudbury. I don't have to tell you, Sudbury is an amazing community of hardworking, resilient, and welcoming people. But the fact is, a lot of families in our community are feeling uncertain about their future. Kathleen Wynne is telling us the economy is booming and it's doing very well, but for many of us, we're not feeling it in our pockets. And you have to ask yourself, if the economy is doing well and you're not seeing the results, then who's the economy working for? For too many, our community has become less affordable and less livable than ever before. And people are frustrated after decades of switching between bad and worse Liberal and Conservative governments. The cost of living, the cost of hydro and child care and housing continues to soar. And people are fed up with being told their only choices are bad and worse. We're headed for change, but what kind of change? Doug Ford says that he's going to leave no stone unturned when it comes to finding efficiencies. He's going to slash at least $6 billion across the board, and that will include health, and that will include education for our children. We've seen this before. The last Conservative government fired 6,000 nurses. They closed 28 hospitals, and they axed more than 7,000 hospital beds. And today, with healthcare in crisis, schools closing, and soaring hydro bills sending the cost of living through the roof, it's efficiencies like these that Toronto Star columnist Linda McQuaid recently reminded us almost certainly contributed to the 2001 killing of Kimberly Rogers. Fortunately, we don't have to settle for bad or worse, and I'm excited to be representing our community as part of Andrew Horwath's NDP. We have an ambitious vision that offers hope, and we have a plan to make change for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Ms. Wong.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming on such a beautiful afternoon. My name is Mila Chavez Wong, and tonight I am on a mission. I want to introduce to you Consensus Ontario, the party that will end all parties replaced by independent members of parliament. It will mean a voice of our local priorities and issues, not beholden to the platform of any political party. I am a registered nurse, a former human rights officer, and a former city councillor. I was also the Sudbury PC candidate on 2 elections. I am compelled to run in this election because, like some of you, I've had it for 30 years. These parties have chance to govern our province, but where are we now? We are in debt, we are unfragmented in a lot of our services, and party politics marginalize the North because we have more trees than votes from people. Our health, public health, and healthcare system is a dysfunctional patchwork of election promises, gifts from elections past. It has no accountability, and there is no long-term planning involved. Healthcare rights is a human right. Healthcare for everyone here is a human right. So don't let anybody tell you otherwise. That is a right. When you are sick here, you know somebody who had been sick, you enter the system alone. There's no collaboration for you, but if there is collaboration for you, it's actually fragmented. So there is no plan also for debt repayment from any of these parties. 30 years of these parties, it started to change the system. We want you to consider Consensus Ontario for independent member of parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. And thank you very much to all the candidates for your introductory remarks. I will now call upon tonight's panelists to begin the question period. Ashley Sauvé, your first question, please.
What would your party do to fight to reduce home carrying costs like hydro, utilities, and property taxes for homeowners?
Thank you, Ashley. We will now call upon the candidates in random order to respond to this question. Remember, you have 1.5 minutes to respond. Ms. Wong, call upon you first to respond to this question.
So what's the first topic? Sorry.
Pardon?
The first, she gave 3 issues.
I'll just get you to repeat it.
What would your party do to fight to reduce the cost of utilities, property taxes, and heating for Ontario homeowners?
Okay, I'll start with healthcare because that's our biggest problem right now. Right now, healthcare is unfragmented and actually doesn't work together. So the first thing that we should do is all the spending programs should be reviewed, and it has to be evidence-based that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. There will be redundancies of programs, but we can repurpose that. We might not need new monies at all. On utilities, we will actually advocate for a flat rate hydro. Right now, hydro, we have surplus in hydro, but we sell it down south, cheap, and then they are actually charged cheaper than us. The problem is we don't have storage capacity. We should do research and development on storage capacity so that we can actually put this surplus for our own use. So we want a flat rate Ontario hydro so you can plan how much goes to food. And I'm sorry, the other one, sorry. The other issue?
Property taxes for homeowners.
Property taxes is inflated. First, I would like you guys to consider, would we say that you stay at home, we'll give you your care if you're a senior? But actually, what we do is we also jack up your property tax. Anybody who is right now on retired and fixed income should not be involved with the property tax increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Mr. Crowder, same question.
As for hydro, that's a pretty loaded question, but basically the green energy plan has cost us $8 billion in extra billing. So that would be the first thing that we would look at, is to negotiate those contracts based on the legality of how they were signed and the property uses that they have with them. We'd also, as Doug Ford said, fire the CEO of Hydro One, and in a year and a half that would pay that off. As for property tax, it's a pretty simple thing. We have a very huge city with lots of roads and not a lot of houses. Our actual property, our population here has not increased for the last 30 years. So if we want to reduce our property taxes, we need to bring more people into the city. And the only way you do that is you invest in infrastructure to bring business here and innovation and diversification. That way, it's a lifestyle community that kids can actually get a job here instead of having to move to Kitchener and Ottawa and Toronto, and we can rebuild our community and be a great place to live and have more people paying taxes, which would reduce our tax base here as well. And as for heating, that's just a ploy to get you to use more electricity so Kathleen and her friends can reap the benefits.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Mr. West.
Yeah, I think out of those, the most important one, I believe, is hydro. We talk about hydro, we're talking about privatization of hydro that created a massive increase in the price of hydro. And I'm sitting beside the energy minister, who probably could have done something about that or should have done something about that. Our party with the NDP is the only party committed to buying it back. We're going to make it public again, and it's going to reduce bills by 30%. We're not investing, we're not taking out loans to artificially lower the price. We're taking it back in public hands, which is very important to us, and important to all of us to bring it down. I think as well, when we talk about firing the CEO, it's a great heart message about firing the CEO, and I'm sure we all want to do it because it's unfair that the amount of money he makes is so high, but at the same time, there's a poison pill attached to that, and you have to take account how costly that would be to do that. And that takes integrity to look at the big picture, not the small picture. In terms of property taxes, I think that we're implementing a housing speculation tax so that people who are driving up the price of houses will be unfairly taxed so that we keep our prices low. When you talk about jobs, we're committed to hiring more early childhood educators and improving personal support workers for long-term care, which will bring jobs to the community. Thank you.
Mr. Thibault, I'll call upon you next.
Thanks, Chair. When it comes to electricity, we've already reduced rates by 25% through the Fair Hydro Plan. For those in rural and northern areas, it's between 35 and 50% through the Fair Hydro Plan. When it comes to property taxes, the one thing that I think is extremely important is to continue to provide supports to the municipalities. One of the things that we've done as a Liberal government is increase the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. And specifically here in Sudbury, we've increased that from $1.9 million a year to $9 million a year. That allows the municipality to then use that money for infrastructure rather than having to increase property taxes to do so. We're not going to continue to download, like the Conservatives did when they were in power, to download services onto the municipalities, which then forces them to increase property taxes. And then one of the things that my colleague from the NDP failed to mention is that they now have a small business property tax that they're going to actually bring forward, which could bring up rates another 28%. So for us, we're going to continue to find ways to work with the municipalities to lower rates, to lower property taxes by providing them dollars for infrastructure. On heating, we're going to continue to find ways to roll out our natural gas program, make that renewable natural gas, because renewable natural gas is part of an overall strategy that we can use to actually make less GHGs within our natural gas system, but still people are asking for natural gas, and we'll utilize that.
Great timing. Dr. Robinson, your response, please.
Well, I have to be really different here. I'm not going to promise magical solutions for reducing costs of electricity. We bought the system. One way or another, we pay for it. And anybody who's promising to cut those is just taking money out of one pocket and putting it in another. If that's what people want, sure. But it isn't the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem in the long run is an enormous expansion of wind power and bringing the costs down. It is moving to electric vehicles and electric space heating in order to increase the number of customers and spread the fixed costs of the electricity system over a larger number of customers. One of the problems right now is as we get more economical with electricity, we actually reduce the demand, and that means fewer customers are paying for all of the fixed costs. So that's not hard to fix. If we get rid of fossil fuels, we save $55 billion that are going out of the province. That's it? No, oh goody. Oh goody. Healthcare. Healthcare isn't going to go away. Those costs are expanding, and we in the Green Party really want to spend a lot more, as the other parties do, on services for people. But we have to face the fact that that means we're going to have to pay a lot more. Can't promise that one's going to disappear either. What about municipal taxes? Well, the problem there is we need to download. We need to download more revenue sources.
Going to have to stop you there, Dr. Robinson. Thank you. Mr. Sylvester, your response.
I really do appreciate, all of my fellow candidates have said some pretty great things, and a lot of them are, basically not telling you directly that it doesn't matter if it comes from Peter or Paul, it all comes out of our pocket, the taxes. So the idea of downloading or uploading or anything like that, we're the ones that pay it at all levels, the public. So looking at promises like that is like a shell game, it sounds like to me anyways. But at the very same time, Mr. Robinson here has a great idea about how we can be more efficient, and that's one way to lower the hydro bills. We have the situation that we have because we voted for the governments that we deserved at the time. So that gives us the results that we have now. Whether we want to believe that or not is another story. But at the same time, in the healthcare industry, we are not looking to reverse any diseases. And that's because it's not very profitable. It's absolutely profitable to treat a disease because then you get a payday every month, which is very expensive for healthcare and all of us. But we're looking at an idea that maybe with a better intent to maintain our health so that we could call it a healthcare system rather than looking to treat sickness and illness, where that you could call a sick care system that profits from our illness and suffering.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvester.
Thank you.
Mr. Popescu.
I think that a basic problem to expenses, whether it's hydro or taxes, is human greed. There's an awful lot of dishonesty and comes out in scams we hear about from time to time. I think that salaries are really out of whack because public officials are supposed to be our servants, not our lords, and they're getting paid like lords. With respect to municipal taxes, I think that a lot of money is wasted to arts, ungodly arts, all sorts of festivals that center around liquor or kind of rock bands that drag people's morals down. Go to our libraries. You'll find all sorts of literature, pornographic literature advertised, and you walk in, you wouldn't even find a Bible in the libraries. I've gone to several and asked, and we'll have to bring one in. They're undoing.
Thank you, Mr. Popescu. I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you, candidates. We will now open the question up for a 5-minute debate amongst the candidates. You are invited to question each other or challenge another viewpoint. The debate is now open. Who would like to begin? Mr. Crowder?
I'd just like to ask Glenn about, we talked about heating and gas and all the wonderful things they're doing with gas now. As far as I've read, private companies were willing to put gas lines across urban or rural areas, including Northern Ontario, and your government refused to do that. And then when you had backlash from it, now you've actually allocated $100 million of your budget money to be able to put in gas lines instead of just letting them put in the gas lines. For me, in which our policy is based on, is just let them actually put the gas lines in. It's not going to save the taxpayer any money. It's going to be the same rate for the gas. And we were going to use that for broadband and wireless so that we could actually help people in northern communities and rural areas. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly what is the gas strategy for your government.
So it's making sure that communities like, for example, East Ferris get access to gas, because the private companies wouldn't go to these communities and put the gas lines in because there was no business plan for it. So the government put a $100 million grant program in place to help the companies roll out natural gas to these communities. So we've made sure that there is a choice for many of these communities that they can get gas now, because the companies, as you were saying, weren't doing it before. So government does what it's supposed to do. It helps incentivize and create the need that has been asked for by the people. And putting that $100 million grant program brought forward natural gas into many communities that would have never have had it, and now they have a choice. But what we want to do, and I see David is jumping on this because he doesn't like the idea of fossil fuels. We all recognize we need to do something when it comes to climate change. So that's why we're we're talking about renewable natural gas. Renewable natural gas is a way for us to reduce GHGs. I know David doesn't like it, but we don't have the magic wand yet, and we got to make sure that we actually support people throughout the province when it comes to getting gas, both businesses and, of course, residences as well.
Thanks, Glenn. I'll let David.
I guess that makes it my turn. Renewable natural gas obviously isn't a magic wand because it can't possibly supply the number of BTUs we're talking about, the heat homes. But much more interesting is Kathleen Wynne actually talked about transitioning away from natural gas a while ago, and then she got beat up by gas companies and people who depend on natural gas and chickened out. And that's the truth. So that's why renewable natural gas is a cover-up for not actually having a policy for getting off of natural gas. And there is no scientist in the world who thinks we can keep burning natural gas Few years? Yeah, sure. But you've got to have a transition plan. Glenn doesn't.
There is a transition plan.
There is
to
a
actually move
yeah,
that
it'll
off.
get you
But
there
David,
by
it's the transition
2050.
is we don't have that magic
2000
wand to make sure. So
Yeah,
people
we
in
do.
rural
We do.
communities
You
are
forgot-
actually going to have the choice right
You
now.
forgot
They're
what
going to
the
have the
minister-
choice
Dr. Robinson,
between
I'll
getting
just get
natural gas
Mr. Tebow an opportunity just to respond to
After
that
he
one
cut
point.
me off, sure.
Thank you. So they do have the opportunity. There is a transition plan in place. And you know what? It is something that the gas companies and environmentalists are looking at as a solution, because we know that we need to ensure that there are still choices available to the people in communities that don't have any other choice than electricity. So we want to be able to give them those type of choices. But at the same time, David, other things that we are doing are giving them cold air heat source pumps, access to solar panels, more money for insulation and windows, because ultimately when you look at companies like Supershell that's based out of Nipissing on Garden River First Nation, they can build a home that can run off of just one electric baseboard heater. So we need to ensure that we're going to change the building code and make sure that we
Thanks,
start
Glenn.
seeing homes
Sorry.
that are built
Can
correctly.
I just correct Glenn on the one issue? It was 76 different communities that were going to be serviced by private companies and only 40 communities from your government plan. So it's not more, it's less communities.
It's oversubscribed, and it's something that we're going to continue to advocate for, and it's something that we're going to continue to do is work with these communities, because these communities, Troy, saw the benefits of what we were bringing forward as a government, and everyone wanted to be part of it. It is obviously well oversubscribed because it was a good policy and a good plan, and that's what our government will continue to do, is build this province up and make sure that we look after our rural communities and our large cities.
Mr. Popescu, you were patiently waiting. You were ready to go with the mic. Do you have a final comment?
Yeah, I guess drilling for oil is related to natural gas. I talked to one man whose brother worked in the oil patch out west. He said they always drill 3 wells, and they cap the 2 most productive ones, and they only pump the least. And that information is hid from us. Back in '72, I bought some stock from
Mr. Popescu, sorry, I'm going to have to hold you there. We're past time. Thank you. Okay, thank you. We'll now open up the question. I'm sorry. Thank you, candidates. David Boyce, and the second question, please.
Thanks, Michael. Candidates, access to skilled labor continues to be a key barrier to business growth in Northern Ontario. What specific actions will your party take to ensure that businesses are able to attract and retain the skilled workers they need?
Thank you. The candidates will now respond to this question in random order. Mr. Popescu, your response, please.
Okay, I think that sin again has taken an awful toll from our youth, and they're supposed to be the future employees. The debilitation of drugs is usually caused by sexual sin that just ruins a person's life and debilitates them from serving as they're supposed to in the prime of their life. We need to get away from the curse of the evolution lie that teaches we're animals, and to re-educate the kids that we're made in the image of God. Our bodies are God's temple. We have to be careful what we do with them, and that'll help out business in the long run.
Thank you, Mr. Popescu. Mr. Crowder.
Well, we just had Bill 148 passed by the Liberals, and we're in this college actually in particular, where men of trade that actually work in trades as a full-time job teach here on a part-time basis to welders and machinists and electrical technicians. And in turn now these guys, because of Bill 148, were going to now get paid a full-time salary when they seemed that they're quite happy making a full-time salary already and being employed and getting extra money, teaching the programs they wanted to, and helping kids get the jobs that they require. Now this is going to cost $7 million a year more here in full-time labor. And instead of looking at the North as something different from maybe other parts of the province with our post-secondary education and trades. You could use that $7 million to further some programs, whether it's in the film industry or whether it's specific money spent in your apprenticeship programs to make sure kids got jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Dr. Robinson, your response, please.
Okay, specifically, we want to get a wood research lab attached to the School of Architecture, 20 jobs there, and skilled people who will be able to train people in Northern Ontario in the new wood products that are being developed and are increasingly important. We need a civil engineering program at Laurentian, bring in another 200 students, which is like bringing in 100 jobs, but it's also increasing our supply of trained people in the high end of the workforce. We need to hand over control of the forests to the communities across Northern Ontario so they can use them for developing smaller products and not just producing pulp and 2x4s. We need to make sure that all the training in mining and forestry for Ontario is done where the mining and forestry is done, that is in our northern communities. That brings more jobs up here, but it also means that, like the School of Medicine, we're producing the talent here and it's going to stay here. That was the whole reason for the School of Medicine, and that's why we need civil engineering and the other things I've talked about.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Ms. Wong.
Thank you. I think we have to look at the curriculum of colleges for skilled labor. We must base it on the demand of what the employer needs. You just can't be churning out, for example, I'll touch the universities. We're churning out Bachelor of Arts. For what? So that they can flip burgers? No, that's really a sophisticated, higher level of education. So that means to say that there has to be a target when you reach that. And our vision is that universities should be free in the future. The colleges should be geared to what is needed in the community. If we need welders, well, don't limit the class by 12, expand the class. It's not going to be geared, any of the subjects should not be geared on the number of enrollment. It should be based on the need of the community. You don't have to import welders from Brazil or anywhere else because we need to have that capacity here and hire our own people.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Mr. Thibault.
Thank you, Chair. First off, apprentices. 15,000 apprentices as part of our plan. David, I know you talked about skilled labor and skilled trades and the importance of that for our community, and it is key, especially when you look at our economy, which is resource-based. But secondly, when we know that there's going to be infrastructure built throughout the north. We're talking about $190 billion over the next 13 years to continue to build roads and bridges. So when you talk with the Carpenters Union, when you talk with Leuna, when you talk with many of these building trades, what they're saying is, help us get more of those workers because we know we're getting busier and busier. So help us with the apprenticeship numbers and help us with that component, and we'll see those numbers grow. There also is another very important piece that we can't overlook, which is our federal cousins. We need to ensure that we have strong immigration policy that allows us to bring skilled labor into the north and then utilize their skills and fast-track their qualifications so they can ensure that they can get into those jobs very quickly. We also have a lot of work with the Ministry of Advanced Education and Training. We have our Career Ready Fund that is making sure that we can now match the jobs with the graduates. That's something that Daniel Giroux here and Bill Best from Cambrian College are talking about, making sure that we can start matching those jobs with the individuals. We're talking about 70,000 jobs, some of that now, and 100,000 by 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault.
Yes.
Mr. West, your response, please. Mr. West.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We were chatting, my fault.
I was impressed by his timing. I think this, like all things, you have to start in the beginning. So we're committed to having more career counseling. And I live this myself. I went to join SHOP when I was in high school, and they said, Jamie, you don't need to do that. You have good grades. And they steered me away from it. And I graduated from Cambridge, and I graduated from university. But at the end of the day, I went into an apprenticeship as an electrician. And I work now in heavy equipment and mining, where apprentices and skilled trades are a priority. So I know firsthand how important they are. So I think career counseling is a cornerstone of this, of understanding where jobs are and valuable jobs that are safe to raise a family. I think as well we have to get away from this stigma of not having females in trades. We need to make it more open and inclusive and bring more people on. I work with many female trades people, and they're excellent workers, and we need to have that as a scope and encourage more women into the trades. We'll be increasing our trades apprenticeship by $57 million every year for 3 years, which gives you about $171 million of total. Finally, just because of time, I think that our paid internships and co-ops are going to allow our students to actually have the knowledge and the hands-on training, which is going to help with that skill trade and that ability, so that you don't just have the book smarts, but you actually have the hands-on physical smarts.
Thank you, Mr. West. Mr. Sylvester, your response, please.
Thank you. I can only really talk about, providing skilled labor, from my own perspective as a young man. When I was growing up, and I moved to Northern Ontario, and I wanted to work for Inco. And so I spoke to their HR department and asked them, if I wanted a position in your company, what courses do you recommend that I take to be able to qualify for that? And I think that each company looking for skilled laborers should actually promote a specific program or training program or college education program to meet their needs, and work with that college to make sure that it has all the components in it that will satisfy your needs for skilled labor. And so I'm sorry, I'm putting a little bit back onto the onus of the employer there to actually do a little bit of things to help themselves. But government can support that in many, many ways, because you have a voice, to actually come up with some of the solutions that you may feel will serve your skilled labor needs. And one of the things is to be a part of the tailoring of the education, for the apprenticeship programs or whatever it is you need. And I noticed that many universities have labels over top of the labs, like valet here at Laurentian and places like that. So I know a lot of that is happening. But for the smaller businesses, I think we got to get involved too.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvester. Thank you, candidates. We will now open the question up for a 5-minute debate amongst the candidates. You are invited to question each other or challenge another viewpoint. The debate is now open. We'd like to begin. Would like Troy?
I'd just like to ask Jamie a little bit about the property tax. He talked about inflated prices in our city, and being in real estate and my family being in it for many years, it has nothing to do with actually the price of the house. There's a basic amount of money that the city needs. I think their budget's $760 million a year now. And so if everybody's house was $2, they'd just increase the mill rate to actually make the $760 million. It really comes down to, again, is nothing to do with anything except for you need to have more businesses and more houses and more people. That's the only way you're ever going to reduce your property taxes. It has nothing to do with the price values. I'm just wondering what your government's plan is to actually create jobs here in the north, and not 5 jobs or 20 jobs, but thousands of jobs that we actually need.
A point of information just before.
Okay.
Are we supposed to be sticking with David's question or going off on?
We should be. And the question, thank you for that, Dr. Robinson. The question was, what is your government going to do about the access to skilled labor problem? And I'd like to keep it centered around that. So there are jobs available, but in North, there aren't people to fill those jobs. So what do we do about that?
Okay, I would then put this back to Glenn then.
Oh, don't give him more time for.
No, just a question.
Very quickly.
Everything is about the future, but we've had 16 years of government, and we have policies, and we just passed this policy of Bill 148 and many other things that's not addressing
Hold it there, Troy. Glenn?
skilled labor.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think, Troy, what you were talking about in your first response was the teachers here who went on strike. and the concern that they were expressing about Bill 148. But those are the teachers who are actually teaching the individuals to get back into the fields. To answer your second point, which is how are you going to build homes? You actually need skilled labor to build things in these communities. So you need those teachers here and actually working to actually teach those people to actually create the jobs and create an economy that is going to continue to grow in the north. The one thing that we keep overlooking, though, and I mentioned it briefly, is the importance of having a sound immigration policy. We as a province have a plan to bring more immigrants to the north, but you need to work with our federal cousins. You need to ensure that we have an immigration office that will allow us to bring those people here. And I remember advocating when I was at the federal government that the Harper government, and I see my old friend Claude Gravel, the MP from Nickel Belt, who's in the office. Once upon a time, we worked side by side on fighting the Harper government to make sure that we could bring keep the office here, and that's something I know the Chamber is seeing as an important issue as well.
Thanks.
That's something we need to continue to advocate for.
Thanks, Glenn. Mr. West, did you want to speak about the immigration as a point? I see.
About it, well, it was Glenn's comment about Bill 148 and the strike that we have with the colleges and the universities here, and it's a little bit misleading when you talk about creating jobs. The issue that a lot of that strike had to do with was about sessional teachers. So you have full-time faculty teachers who can plan their lives and they have careers. A sessional role is a job. It's a part-time gig that you get and you reapply again and again for. You're not sure if you're going to have a class or not have a class. That's the issue. The number of sessional professors, the number of part-time precarious workers is beyond 50%. And that was the issue. I mean, there's many issues to the strike, but that was one of the key issues of the strike is people working full-time or working hand-to-mouth, not able to have a better way of life, right? And that's what we're talking about in our plan. Our plan talks about moving more sessionals to full-time so that it's not only good for the workers in the community because you have full-time work and benefits and you can plan a career. It's good for the community because your students can go back and ask those teachers for information later on. They can get letters of reference. They can build a relationship because sessional teachers can be transitional and move in and out of different economies.
Dr. Robinson, you've been waiting. Thank you.
There's a reason why economics is sometimes called the dismal science. David's question is about how you get more talent into the area so that businesses can expand. But people don't immigrate to an area that's losing population and doesn't have jobs in the first place. So we've got a catch-22, and I think David recognizes it, and like all of us is looking for a way out. One way is to produce a surplus, those student training programs I've talked about. Another way is to hand the forests over to people in Northern Ontario instead of selling them off to foreign companies who will produce 2x4s and low value-added products. That would give us a real drive in the northern economy.
Thank you. We've got 2 seconds left, so I'm going to end it there, and I'll turn it over to Tracy Nutt for the third question, please.
My question is, businesses have expressed alarm about the unintended consequences of Bill 148, including the burden of additional leave entitlements and challenges with new scheduling provisions, among others. What steps will your party take to address these consequences?
Thank you, Tracy. The candidates will be called upon in random order to answer. Mr. Tebow, your response, please.
She went too fast. We couldn't hear.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Just slowly, please.
Businesses have expressed alarm about the unintended consequences of Bill 148, including the burden of additional leave entitlements and challenges with new scheduling provisions, among others. What steps will your party take to address these consequences?
And Mr. Tebow.
Thanks. So thanks for the question. One of the things that we've heard from many businesses over the last little bit was the stat pay holiday and the concerns that they had in relation to that. So we listened to what they said and we made changes to revert back to the way the system was. We were hoping to have that in place for the May long weekend, but unfortunately we weren't able to get the schedule out through the Ministry of Labour in time, so that change will be made effective as of the July long weekend, and then going forward we'll be consulting with the business community to make sure that we talk to them about how we can make that work for both the employees and the employers moving forward. There's going to be a consultation process that will occur to ensure that we hear from temporary agencies, that we're talking about some of the significant concerns to some of the small businesses, some of the mom and pop shops, the pizza shops, the business that has 2 or 3 employees that was expressing some of the concerns, so we'll be able to act on that and make some of those changes. But when it comes to updating and bringing forward Bill 148, it was the right thing to do to ensure that we help continue to build Ontario up and make sure that we support as many people and as many employees and businesses throughout the province.
Thank you, Mr. Thibeault. Mr. Sylvester, your response, please.
Yeah, just basically, from what I understand, it has a lot to do with the economies of scale, that they're not, the mom and pops versus the larger corporations, and it will hurt a lot of small businesses because of the economies of scale. And also trying to balance that with the basic living wage and quality of life, for the individuals in the project in the province that work, for a living. And so it's to me, it's a matter of just taking into consideration, the factors as a bill is being written. But it's really good if we can actually, make a mistake and say, hey, we made a mistake and now we're going to fix it. But I know in business you have to be proactive. So I would definitely consider voting for the party that you feel is the most proactive. And honestly, I don't see many, people looking at, the end game of anything. And what I mean by that is I hear some things about, sustainable growth. It is unsustainable in a finite world anyway. So we're eventually, given the adjustments, if you want to call it that, or failures, if you want to be realistic about it.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvester.
Thank you. Yep.
Ms. Wong.
So first, there's some good things about Bill 148 and some bad things. First, a small business, of course, you do a projection of a business plan. So for this year, say, for example, you have made a business plan that you're paying people at this rate, and that is your annual budget. I wish the government would follow this kind of concept from the small business people. So when you raise it that fast, you just don't give actually the small businesses a chance to transition their lives and their budget, how to meet this new, all of a sudden, your $15. What's missing there is the planning issue to just give a break to the small businesses to be able to reflect those new changes. Secondly, we support full-time positions better than the part-time person working. So you see, when you work part-time, the employer will have to cut you in hours. So because he needs physical body to run his business, will also be disadvantaged to maintain and sustain his business, because now there's not enough people doing the job so that they can generate revenue.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Mr. Crowder, your response, please.
Yes, I think this is the problem with government in general, is these blanket policies without really strategically figuring out how they're going to affect different parts of our economy or our society. Small business is taking a beating between the higher taxes, higher hydro, the effects of Bill 148 on them, and now it seems like that's the direction that both of the other parties want to go, is keep beating on small business, and it's unfortunate to realize that that is the heartbeat of our economy, is small business. So if you want to actually make good policy, you should be looking at those small businesses and giving them a break, because they give themselves a job and they give a few other people a job, and that's what keeps this economy going. And again, I look at the same blanket policies that you make for all of Ontario instead of realizing that Northern Ontario has its own issues much different than Southern Ontario or Toronto. Most policies are just blanket policies.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Mr. Popescu.
Again, looking at it from a biblical perspective, I think with all the difficulty that small businesses are facing with the hike in minimum wage and everything, maybe the government should sort of bite the bullet and subsidize a 1-hour Bible study program for all employees, led by the most capable of them or the boss, at the expense of the government. That would have a good effect on productivity, punctuality, soberness, just mental stability in this drug debilitated day and age in which we live. It'll just get people thinking on the right track again and serve their bosses properly, and maybe, if possible, shut down on the Lord's Day, honor Him.
Thank you, Mr. Popescu. Mr. West, your response, please.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of the concerns I heard about small business and the concerns that they have. So my mom had a small business, and I grew up in Sudbury housing below the poverty line. And if it wasn't for my mom's small business, I wouldn't have had the success our families had. And I'm not talking about major success. I'm just talking about back-to-school shopping at Sears instead of the Salvation Army. They really do pull people out of poverty. So I really want to tell you that it's an important capacity to me. But at the same time, when you talk about Bill 148, those changes are very necessary. It's unfortunate that small business feels the crunch so hard because they have to compete with large business that was taking advantage of these unfair laws. A lot of people think of Bill 148 as the minimum wage law. That's $14 now, and it's going to $15 next January. There's more to it than that, but the fact is when you look at the minimum wage and you have conversations about it, that wage, that floor, was never intended originally to be where people spent their entire careers. And we have people raising families. That minimum wage that was low was below the poverty line. You cannot have a workforce below the poverty line and a thriving business community. You have to artificially push it up above the poverty line in order to have it. And that's where our NDP government is committed to, and then tying into inflation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Dr. Robinson, your response, please.
The Green Party supports the minimum wage rulings. Beyond that, I don't actually have any policy in the party on the immediate problems that you're talking about. We just haven't dealt with that question. We don't expect to have to deal with it before we're in power. But so let me cheat briefly and tell you that we do have one item which I think is really important to small business, and that is our changes. We want to change the property tax regime to a site valuation scheme and make it uniform. Right now, small businesses are expected to subsidize property taxes for homeowners all across the place. Industrial properties pay even more than commercial properties. This is really, really bad economics, but it's what voters want. They want to suck money out of those small businesses. Got to stop doing it. So vote for the Green Party so you get site valuation, and that will actually save small businesses a lot of money.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Thank you, candidates. We will now open the question up for a 5-minute debate amongst the candidates. You are invited to question each other or challenge another viewpoint. The debate is now open. Who would like to begin?
I'll start.
Mr. Thibault.
So, Troy, you've put those questions to me, so I'll put one back to you. You started talking about blanket policies and how you don't like blanket policies. So that got me thinking that you're obviously in the wrong party, because all Doug Ford has done since he took over as leader is bring forward blanket policies that aren't costed. So if you don't like blanket policies, I'm not sure what you're doing in the PC party, because that's all he does. So let's be clear about the question. We were talking about Bill 148 and some of the changes that are needed. And I get that, and we've heard from small businesses. One of the things that when I had Minister Flynn and Minister Leal here in town, and we spoke with the Chamber, there were some issues that were flagged by some companies here that had contracts, for example, that said, I've got a 2-year contract which states this is what I can charge. How am I now going to try and renegotiate this with this new company? Those are things that we have to continue to address and evolve. But as Jamie said, these changes were necessary and needed because there were large companies that were taking advantage of many people stuck in precarious work. And we need to end that. We need to end precarious work and make sure that we give people a good job, a full-time job, so that they can actually look after their families. And then find a way of going back to school so they can continue to increase their education and get a better paying job.
Thank you. Mr. Crowder, an opportunity to respond.
I think the blanket policy is basically trying to save our economy, $330 billion in debt, and I think he's trying to figure out how we're going to stop this roller coaster into death that you guys have us on right now. Again, his generalized thinking is we need to help business because it's been crushed over and over and over for the last 16 years. And you create business by being creative and giving a hand up. It's not about a handout. And once you give a hand up and you actually build a team, we have a very, very incredibly smart group of people that live in this city. We have a phenomenal post-secondary education programs. And to get them all working together to solve problems and create new industries here in the city, we've been relying on this heartbeat of a mining community for so long, and it's slowly but surely getting smaller and smaller. And as a government, we need to figure out how to stimulate and create new lines and new diverse economies here in Sudbury, which are all just waiting to happen. It comes down to working with the city and not sitting in our little ivory towers and throwing around your blanket policies.
So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder.
So thanks to our Liberal government and the NOHFC policy, we've created 1,500 jobs in the film and television sector. That is a growing sector. We've got a growing tourism sector thanks to Science North and their expansion and moving throughout the north. We have a very diversified economy here in Sudbury, and it's something that we're going to continue to see grow throughout the northeast. We're the hub. We're going to be creating those jobs, and it's something that our government will continue to do, is making sure that we're investing in the north and talking about policies that matter to the people and businesses the most.
That's not 1,500 full-time jobs. That's 1,500 part-time jobs.
No, that's 1,500 full-time jobs, Troy. Get your facts straight.
No, it's not. It's not. And on top of that, your NOHFC fund that's supposed to be $100 million a year does not get spent to $100 million a year, and that money does not stay in a fund and keep growing and get put back into Northern Ontario. It gets stuck back in your Liberal coffers to pay for other things.
No, it's
Northern Ontario.
It's actually $100 million every year.
Look at your budget.
And what
Look
doesn't
at your
get
budget
spent.
year after year. I went through it with Vic Fideli today. Look at your budget,
there you go.
And believe me,
There we
it
go.
is true.
Yes.
Dr. Robinson?
I have a signed and autographed copy of Vic Fideli's book on the budget. I don't know what he's learned since then. We'll have to see. Vic is a friend of mine, and he's actually promoted some of the more important things. One of them is the use of heavy timber in construction and being allowed to build wood buildings up to 6 stories. He's working on pushing it farther. We need that here in Northern Ontario because one of our great opportunities is cross-laminated timber and heavy timber products. We don't have any capacity, and we haven't had any real support from the provincial or federal governments in moving in that direction yet. Another area which isn't getting nearly enough attention from the provincial government, and I've been working on this for, 16 years now, is the mining supply sector. It's our biggest job creator. It is full of small businesses
Thank you, Dr.
that
Robinson.
are doing
I'm
really
going to
well.
have to stop you there. We have now, thank you, candidates. Appreciate it. And thank you, panelists, for your questions. Questions from the audience. We have now received a number of questions from the audience, and our panelists will begin posing them to the requested candidate. I will remind the candidates of the 1.5-minute time limit for responding to these questions. Again, the timekeeper will sound a bell with 30 seconds remaining in the time. First question, please.
My question is for Mila Wong from the audience. Will you do something about encouraging employers to hire more people with disabilities?
Sorry, I can't hear.
One more time.
Will you do something about encouraging employers to hire more people with disabilities?
Yeah, that is that is our aim, is that people with disabilities should be considered for employment. They are highly skilled. You can see the Jarrett. I run the Jarrett. That is my job every day. And there is joy in them getting work. You get value. Some of them are members here, and definitely 110% just for the disabled. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question. Do you have another question?
For Troy Crowder. Communities in Northern Ontario face significant demographic challenges, with the population for every community outside of Greater Sudbury expected to remain stagnant or shrink. What steps will your party take to attract more people to Northern Ontario?
The reason I moved back to Sudbury is because I love this city, I love the people here, and I love the northern lifestyle that we can live. Unfortunately, if you come from out of town, you have not one bit of opportunity to experience that in Sudbury. We have unconnected bike lanes, we have no restaurants, no hotels on our waterfront, we have nowhere you can rent a canoe or a kayak. Our university students are stuck at a campus that has no grocery store, no arena. We have industry that wants to start business here with a city that is so spread out that it actually has no money then to help out in infrastructure, so they want all this cost up front. So as a province, you need to find out what these great solutions to the problems are, what companies are going to come in that are going to bring an industry that we do not have right now, whether that's tech or IT or advancement in manufacturing, and use the knowledge base that we have here instead of letting it slip away to Southern Ontario, and build and create different, diverse businesses here so that people want to live here, want to live the northern lifestyle. And on top of that, we get the free money that comes along with tourism. Being the hub of Northern Ontario, we have Killarney, we have Manitoulin Island, the French River, North Bay, Timmins, all these places around us. With our airport and our central location, we should be the hub of starting for tourism along with innovation.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Next question, please.
The next question is for Glenn Thibault. The Indigenous people are in crisis. They have no water on many reserves. We know that the Army can and do have the technology and capability of building water treatment plants. How is your party going to fix this problem, and when?
We need to continue to work with the federal government to ensure that the appropriate infrastructure is built in place to help with the water crisis that we're seeing on many of our First Nations. I will wear my Minister of Energy hat very quickly and talk about the Watay Power connection. So we're connecting 16 of the 21 First Nations in northwestern Ontario to the electricity grid. That should have been done decades ago, but the best way to fix something like that should have been done decades ago is to do it today. Part of the reason why I'm saying this is when you connect them to the electricity grid, it gets them off of diesel generation. When you get them off of diesel generation, it gets them off of an inconsistent supply of electricity. That also means that their water filtration system was reliant on that diesel generator. Every time that diesel generator conks out, so does their water filtration system, and then they go on to a boil water advisory. So we need to ensure that we get them on this electricity grid as soon as possible, and that's what something that they talk to me about, is it's giving their community hope, and that's just one of many solutions that we're trying to bring forward, and we're going to continue to work with the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation and with our federal government to ensure that we can address this issue of making sure that they have clean water to drink every single day.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault. Next question, please.
My question is for David Sylvester. What steps will your party take to ensure we can reach an agreement on NAFTA and continue our essential trade relationship with the United States?
Ooh.
If you have that answered, let us know.
That's a real good question. The North American Free Trade Agreement, trade is pretty much what our economies are based on anyways, and so it is important, to promote trade. I don't even know if that agreement does that. You know, I mean, I think that Canada is the most sued country in the NAFTA, out of all the countries that are a member of NAFTA. So it's really not helping us as much as we might believe it is. I think that there's other ways to assure fair trade, and I don't know if it can be done within the NAFTA agreement. I'm not really sure. I honestly don't. I just hear and read in the papers that, you know, we are the most sued country under the NAFTA agreement, and we are paying out millions of tax dollars, you know, because of that agreement, because we're not sovereign in this way to be able to pass our own laws banning a product without paying the company that produces the product some sort of compensation. I mean, if it's good for us, the people, and it should be banned, then we should have the right within the sovereignty within our nation to do so without cost, you know, to serve our people. So that's part of the issues in the NAFTA that I'm aware of that I don't think is very helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvester.
Next question,
please.
Next question from the audience for Jamie West. In your personal view, how serious a problem is climate change, and how would the NDP improve on the Liberals' cap-and-trade policy so as to be sure that we meet the emission reduction targets we committed to in Paris?
Just give me a moment. How come I couldn't get NAFTA? I think it's no secret that climate change is real. That's a conversation that we all agree to. We've lived it here in Sudbury. Those of you who've grown up in Sudbury, you remember the times we looked like the moon, and we had those giant gray tree trunks that you could throw around, so you felt like an Incredible Hulk when you were 3 or 4 years old. And now you drive down Fruit Road, you know, where I grew up, and they've wrecked all the sliding hills because there's trees everywhere. So no question at all that it's real. Our party policy right now is cap and trade. And that's what we're delivering on, and that's what we're committed to. We're setting targets that are achievable. If there's anything I've learned in my role in mining is that people work to what they're measured to. So if you set goals and targets that are achievable and you measure for them to get people to go to those, that's where we're going. That's basically the answer.
Thank you, Mr. West. Next question, please.
This question is for Mr. Robinson. Our water treatment plants are overtaxed by increased population and cannot filter out contaminants such as medication that have been found in our tap water, high chlorine and fluoride. How would your party deal with the use of fluoride and other harmful chemicals in our drinking water?
This is actually a problem that's getting to be serious right across North America. That is, populations are polluting their water sources. We're sucking water out of Ramsey Lake and dumping salt in, and we don't have any strategy for it. The salt levels look like they're going to get to level of 80 parts per billion or whatever it is within 3-4 years. 200 is considered dangerous. 40 is about where we are now. We're still increasing salt input. The province simply has to put limits on municipalities now. It's going to be hard because it's going to cost more money to avoid it. We're going to have to go to things like wood, pulp and wood fiber for a lot of our roads, for example. There's a long list of ways of avoiding dumping chemicals into the water that we have to implement. And the different chemicals require some different treatments. People putting salt on their sidewalk is a problem. So the province actually has to move, and that's the big one, and it has to impose much stricter regulations. I've got a list of different chemicals and different regulations in my fat policy book here, and I can't remember all the details. The big one is the province has to impose much more stricter standards than we had back in 1990 or 1950.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Next question, please. David or Ashley?
My question is for Jamie West from the audience. What will the NDP do to address the crisis in hospitals today and the hallway medicine that is happening?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. This is important. This is one of the pillars of our platform, actually. Hallway medicine is just out of control. We used to be, you had stories about it, but now everyone seems to know one or two people who have gone through this. And we know that the workers in the area are under a tremendous amount of pressure to make do with less and less and less all the time. Our commitment is to increase funding by 5.3%. We're going to additionally invest $916 million. And we're going to have annual funding at or above inflation, population growth, and the needs of the community. We're also going to actually report wait times, so we don't underreport the wait times, so we have actual data to work at. Like I talked about earlier, if you measure something, you can actually make a difference, so we're going to actually measure it, report it, and improve on it. But that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. West. Next question, David.
Next question for Glenn Thibault. Would a Liberal government commit to putting the life-saving drug for Ontarians with the cystic fibrosis called Orkambi on the Ontario formulary?
So part of our plan right now is to make sure through OHIP Plus, so for 25 and under, to make sure that we have all 4,400 drugs plus the enhanced drug components part of that 4,400, and then we're making sure that for those that are 65 and over next year that they will also have free medicine. When it comes to this specific drug, that's something that I'm not sure if it's part of the formulary. I'm happy to have a conversation with the individual that asked the question afterwards to talk about that, and if there's something that we can do to talk to our colleagues within the Ministry of Health, I'm more than happy to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault. Tracy,
This question is also for Glenn Thibault from the audience. Your Liberal government has bankrupted this province. How do you expect my children and my grandchildren to find the ability to pay this debt?
So I'm very proud of a record that makes sure that we're talking about investments in people. And our government has looked at and talked about our books, and we are in a surplus this year. But we are going into deficit next year, and that's a choice that we have made as a government, because we know that we have many things that we need to invest in. We know that we have an aging population and a growing population of seniors that will need supports. We need money for that. So we're going to go into deficit to make sure that we're caring for our residents, we're caring for our seniors, we're going to invest in healthcare, we're going to invest in childcare, and then we've got a path back to balance, making sure that we come back to balance. And it's not just us as a government that's saying this. The TD this week talked about how we have seen surplus growth of 2.7% and an impressive growth path that they have said. And they said the last 4 years of growth that we've seen in Ontario have not been seen since the early 1990s. So we're making sure that not only are we investing in people, but we're growing our economy on a path back to balance.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault. Next question.
My question is for Troy Crowder. Considering the current fiscal situation, should MPPs' salaries be reduced or frozen?
I know I made more money when I played hockey, that's for sure. It's a funny game. Everybody thinks you have all the answers. If you had all the answers, you'd be a very rich man. But I got into politics because I am fed up with the direction that we're going. I look at a city that I love and I realize it's dwindling and we've never achieved the potential that we have. Yes, our greening efforts have done wonderful things to bring this community back, but now we need to take advantage of it. We need to take advantage of the brains and the generations of people that are here. So all that I'm doing this for has nothing to do with my salary. It has everything to do with making this city what it should be so that my kids and my grandkids and your grandkids can all live a great life here. So you can do whatever you want with my salary.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Next question, please.
Thanks, Michael. For David Popescu, businesses are still determining the full impact of Bill 148. but a preliminary peer-reviewed analysis from the Canadian Centre for Economic Analysis found that it would create a huge challenge for Ontario businesses. How would you address the issues related with Bill 148?
Okay, I don't know what that bill stands for, but again,
Perhaps
it's
the minimum wage increase, along with the other regulations.
I've already spoken on that a few minutes ago. Let employees begin a Bible study program. Let employers begin a Bible study program for employees, and shut down on the Lord's Day. Honor God if they can, and I think that would produce savings as far as honesty goes, and punctuality goes, and just the functionality goes. I think maybe that was a tax grab that Kathleen Wynne did it for, and it should have been spaced out a little better instead of all at once like that. But I think the Bible's still the answer.
Thank you, Mr. Popescu. Next question, please.
Next question is for Dr. Robinson from the audience. Businesses have repeatedly called for a more strategic and focused allocation of cap and trade revenues. What steps will your party take to help businesses transition to a low-carbon economy?
I didn't hear the very first part of that.
I'm sorry. Businesses have repeatedly called for a more strategic and focused allocation of cap and trade revenues. What steps will your party take to help businesses transition to a low-carbon economy?
Well, I've been talking about this for an awfully long time, and at risk of repeating myself, the cap and trade revenues, you got the wrong program, and you're using the revenues the wrong way. You need a uniform charge on carbon, and that's a carbon tax, not one that excludes the 150 largest corporations and isn't going to get the prices up in a reasonable length of time. It's just not going to be a successful program. Even the government's own people admit that now. The right way to handle the revenues from it, though, is to completely separate it from government. It should not be government revenue. It should go into a separate commission that distributes it back to the population. Then you've had the effect of raising the price of carbon fuels while not reducing the wealth of people. They're able to buy more. They're going to buy less of those carbon fuels. That's going to make enormous opportunities for businesses. Because in every transition between technologies, some people lose a heck of a lot and other people get rich. Well, we know who's going to lose a heck of a lot. It's the owners of carbon, of oil wells and gas wells. They're going to lose trillions of dollars. And those trillions are there for other businesses to pick up, providing you take the money from a carbon tax and give it back to the people to spend on the businesses around them.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Next question, please, Ashley.
My question from the audience is for Troy. The Chamber has long advocated for four-laning of Highway 69. Timelines for completion have repeatedly been extended. What steps will your party take to ensure Highway 69 is four-laned within the next few years?
Well, I think the delay is just basically because the money hasn't been there, because it's been wasted on $8 billion worth of e-health and $2 billion in gas plants and the green energy plan. So when you have efficiencies in government and you don't actually waste money and you actually plan projects and you have an end goal and a time frame and you strategically figure it out for your accounting purposes, and you have checks and balances to make sure the projects actually happen, you have a lot more money left over at the end of the day. So as a northerner, I would love to see the four-lane finished. The sooner the better. But obviously we also have to realize that with the thousands and tens of thousands of jobs that have been left, job creation and stimulus comes in infrastructure, and it also comes in new technologies. So Doug's plan, I'm sure, will be to balance out the both of those and try to move our province forward as quickly as we can to make it a healthier economy for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Next question, please, David.
For Jamie West, everyone wants to see the return of passenger rail in Northern Ontario, but it was stopped because the cost per passenger was too high for the province to bear. If passenger rail isn't financially viable, why discuss it at all?
I think this is one of those issues where the role of government is to help everybody. And so when you look at just dollars and cents, you're not always helping everybody. Glenn had alluded to gas plants going to certain areas and other areas because it wasn't cost effective. In the same instance, when you talk about passenger rail, you're talking about transportation for people that is safe, affordable, and economical, especially when you're talking about Northern Ontario winters. So if it's just dollar value, that may not be your bottom line when it comes to, for example, people having to get to health care and medical care in the winter in a safe fashion.
Thank you, Mr. West.
This question is also for Mr. West. How will your party tackle the $300 billion Ontario debt?
I only have a minute and a half. Our four principles of our fiscal plan is that when we make investments, they're investments that make everyone's life better. It seems like for a long time that investments that we make are for people who are already wealthy, already well-connected. And so our fiscal plan centers around making everyone's life better, everyone have opportunities. We need to protect the middle class. The middle class is shrinking, and it's becoming a have and have not. And we also need the wealthy to pay their fair share. And I know at a debate like the Chamber of Commerce is going to send up flags, but we're talking about people who make over $220,000 restoring their taxes by 1%. People who make over $300,000 restoring their taxes in a responsible way by 2%. We're talking about businesses with payrolls over $3 million no longer qualifying for small business exemptions. We're talking about listening to the recommendations that come from our auditor. We have an auditor who gives very good fiscal recommendations that we don't follow. And then we need to listen to them, and if we're not following them, we need to respond to why. But at the end of the day, it's about taking care of everyone. That means that when taxes are owed, we collect the taxes. We don't let them flounder. That means everyone pays their fair share. Even if the wealthy have to pay a little bit more, it's everyone paying their fair share. We all prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Next question, please.
This question is from the audience for Glenn Thibeault. Why have you, as Minister of Energy, remained silent about the outrageous salaries of our Hydro One CEO and Board of Directors? What kind of contracts have you and your party agreed to with these individuals?
So thanks for that question, because I haven't remained silent. As I said many times in question period and to the Queen's Park Gallery, I recognize that they're large and that the average citizen will never see a salary like that. What I also said and what I also acted upon was getting the Hydro One board chair and the board to review that salary and to review their compensation framework. But the important thing about all of this is, what is this trying to accomplish? Are we trying to reduce rates even further? Because if we were to take all of those folks and take all of their salaries, and even Mr. Ford has agreed that this wouldn't take 1 cent off of anyone's bills. I get and I recognize that these are high salaries. That's why we're going to have the review. But then who do you replace them with? We need to ensure that this company, our organization that runs the superhighways of electricity, has competent people. Let's make sure that they're paid appropriately, and that's what this review is about, and that's why I haven't stayed silent on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Thibeault. Next question, please, David.
Question for David Robinson. David, can you tell us more about the Ontario Green Party's plan on revamping social assistance, such as Ontario Works, the Ontario Disability Support Program, and Guaranteed Income Supplement for Seniors into a simpler universal income benefit?
Gee, if I'd written the question, it could be the answer. I mean, we have as part of our policy a guaranteed annual income. We plan to start it effectively with our dividend from the carbon tax. We have, I don't know, about 30 different points that focus on exactly that issue of simplifying and making the social assistance and the support for seniors more consistent. You want the truth about the details of that? I don't have them at the top of my head because I'm the climate guy in the party. I'm the economist, not the social system specialist. We've got those people. They've written here. You're welcome to read it. I do specialize in other areas and can't remember all the rest of those details, but boy, I was impressed when I read them. And I'm happy to read them out loud to you all if you give me the time.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
This question is for Jamie West. Is your party willing to reinstate the community startup and maintenance benefit that was downloaded to municipalities in 2012 budget for 2013 back to provincial responsibility? Excuse me.
In terms of the question, I honestly don't know the details of the community startup. I just don't know the answer to it. I know it's a conversation that's important to actually members of the audience, and I probably know who in the audience did. I don't have the details. I can find it and I can publish it on our Facebook page as an answer, but off the top of my head, I don't know that type of specific detail. We do have a poverty strategy, but to that degree, I'm not aware.
Thank you. Next question, please.
My question is for David Sylvester. Energy prices in Ontario are some of the highest in North America and are consistently seen as barriers to business investment and growth. What steps will your party take to ensure energy remains affordable for greater Sudbury businesses?
Well, I look at the gas prices and I look at why did it go up and what, pardon? Anyways, I don't think that, see, we're very, as far as the energy is concerned, we're subject to a global system in actuality. And I don't even know how anybody can actually say that they can do anything to actually secure a finite resource as it's being depleted. You know, we're taking it out far quicker than it can be replenished, so that makes it finite. That means one day we're going to run out. You know, I mean, we've got to transition off of the type of energy systems that we have now. And if we don't pitter-patter and get at her, we're going to experience the consequences of those procrastinations, as you want to call them, or whatever they are in your mind. But they are not addressing the real problem. We don't have a sustainable system. End of story. So we must develop that. You know, that's part of evolution, as part of our responsibilities as individuals on this planet, is to leave a better world than we were given and not try to continue a world that has no future. And so I would very much encourage all governments to look at alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please, David.
For Glenn Thibault. Mr. Thibault, the Liberal government has recently sold off a majority stake of Hydro One. How can a company be expected to provide affordable hydro to all Ontarians when the very nature of a private company is to put profits first and people second?
So the important thing to recognize with Hydro One, as with any utility in the province, is they are a rate-regulated company, and the Ontario Energy Board is what sets the rates. It's not Hydro One. It's not Greater Sudbury Utilities. They actually apply to the Ontario Energy Board with their operation and maintenance and some of their capital expenses. And then the Ontario Energy Board reviews that application and says yay or nay to their increase. The Ontario Energy Board is the entity the arm's length, quasi-judicial entity that sets the energy rates. So Hydro One, on numerous occasions, has actually submitted an application and has been refused or has seen their request diminished in terms of what they're allowed to charge. So having a private company like Hydro One, in terms of asking what the rates will be, are not set by them. It is set by the Ontario Energy Board, and you will see that on their time of use postings, which they do every June and May and then every November. So the Ontario Energy Board is the entity that sets the price for the provinces.
Thank you, Mr. Thibeault. Next question, please, Tracy.
Question for Mr. West. What is your provincial plan? What is your provincial plan with the placement of the ferrochrome smelter for the Ring of Fire?
Of the placement of the ferrochrome?
Of the ferrochrome plant for the Ring of Fire.
So in terms of the ferrochrome, the Ring of Fire and the placement of the smelter. So first of all, my background is in mining, my background is in safety. So before we have a smelter in Ontario, it has to be safe and it has to be proven that it can be done safely. Saying that we can do it in Finland doesn't mean necessarily we can do it here. And I come from a mining industry where we are doing amazing things with pollution capture, so I know technology exists. So we want the smelter to stay in Sudbury. We want it to stay in Ontario, and we want it to stay safely. So the two keys to that is that we're going to spend $1 billion to move forward on this and in order to proceed with the mining. In order to do that, we need to collaborate with First Nations people, and we need to have a nation-to-nation agreement, which is spelled out in our Northern Platform. The importance of having an agreement and a conversation where you work in collaboration with Indigenous people. So we don't show up and we tell them what we're going to do. We talk about what we're going to do together and how we can do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Next question, please, Ash.
My question is for Troy Crowder. Access to broadband remains a challenge in doing business in many of Northern Ontario's communities. What will your party do to address this challenge?
I actually spoke to this earlier. The $100 million that the government was planning on spending to bring gas lines, which private companies were already going to do, and more communities than they were actually planning from the government side. We would have that $100 million to be able to spend on broadband expansion across our rural and northern areas, along with looking at development of our industries here in the north that go hand in hand with that.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. David, next
Thanks,
question.
Michael. Also for Troy Crowder. Rob Ford has promised to reduce gas taxes by 10 cents per litre. What assurances can the PC party give to voters that this windfall will not immediately be consumed by a rise in profits and price by the gas producers?
Yeah, the gas companies, they have a pretty good monopoly around the world. His only thing is to try to reduce what he can control, is that's taxes. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a game going on with Justin Trudeau right now, which is forcing some of our gas prices up to send a message, I guess, to the Canadian public. So there's only so much you can do as a province when your national leader is doing his little game with the gas companies these days. But he will reduce the taxes to give you a break there.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Next question, please, Tracy.
Question for Glenn Thibeault. During your last term as Liberal MPP for Sudbury, dozens of good full-time jobs were lost, they were laid off by Sudbury Hospital Services. These jobs all went to Southern Ontario, yet the hospital laundry is trucked back to Sudbury daily. What could you have done to protect those lost Sudbury jobs, and what will you do to prevent them from happening again?
So I met with the union and with the hospital on several occasions to try and see what was the logic behind the hospital board making the decision to save that $500,000. They assured me, they assured the community that while unfortunately those jobs were going to be lost and they were shipping everything down south, that this was actually going to be a savings to hospitals and that they would be able to put this into frontline services. Now, again, the board has come forward with a new budget proposal in which we're seeing about $10 million shortfall, and they were proposing cuts and layoffs. And so I worked with the LIN and with the Ministry of Health to ensure that we keep those jobs and we keep those services, and that third-party review right now, which is being done through the LIN. So, I applaud the LIN on stepping forward and saying we're going to review this to make sure that we keep those services and keep those jobs, because we know that frontline services are key. Our workers work extremely hard, and we need to ensure that we keep our quality of care at its current standard, if not better, and that's why I think that third-party review will help us understand that in more detail.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault.
My question from the audience is for Jamie West. How will you protect public services and stop privatization, specifically the expansion of the LCBO, which leads to increased availability, therefore increased harm to our communities?
Yeah, I think this is primarily about the sale of liquor in convenience stores and expansion beyond the LCBO. So our party is we believe in public service and public sector jobs because they are good careers. They're career jobs. They serve two purposes, though. One is about accountability and ensuring that we have controls around who has access to purchasing liquor. And I'm not trying to imply that community organizations won't have that same accountability, but we know in a government-regulated sector that it is. We know probably many of us who tried to make a purchase when they were underage would know that. Not me. But so our position is to protect those jobs, and that we think those are good jobs. Those are good paying unionized jobs that lead to good careers, that affect the economy, because when you have more disposable income in your pocket, you spend it in the community, and that generates more jobs and it stimulates business. It's demand. It's people being able to purchase things that drives the economy. So smaller structure, less pay, leads to less demand and availability to stimulate the economy. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. West. Next question, please, David.
For the Minister of Energy, miners say that it is hot underground. Why do we not use this renewable energy?
So geothermal is something that we're supporting. We're working with many companies to get that process out there even more. Enbridge is recognizing that they need to expand not only out of gas but into other programs, and so they're looking at making sure that we can tap into geothermal. There are lots of things that we need to continue to do as a society to find ways that we can reduce our energy consumption. If you want to hear all about that, you can talk to Kathy Orlando from Citizens Climate Lobby, who's here today as well, who's a strong advocate about making sure that we all do what's right for our environment, for our communities, and making sure that we find other ways to procure and use and generate power.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault. Tracy, next question, please.
This question is for David Robinson. What is your stance on electric cars, and is it part of your platform that will help wean off fossil fuel use?
We're going to move to electric cars. They're already at the dealers. Back in 2012, you were seeing lists of the hottest electric cars out there, and my students, the male students, were looking at these electric cars. They weren't looking at gas cars 5 years ago. The technology for moving to electric cars is all there. The only thing missing is volume. And the main thing that is stopping us from getting the volume is that we don't have a high enough carbon tax. We are still subsidizing fossil fuels. Glenn, our energy minister, is still fossilizing subsidizing fossil fuels. That's what his policy amounts to, and we're not raising those prices until 2022. We're way behind what the federal government proposes, and we're way behind what every scientist requires. Get those prices up, and you'll have hundreds of thousands of electric cars on the road almost right away. It's not the technology that's missing. It is the political will. It's the courage to make the change that's coming anyway, to get in front of the change instead of dragging around behind it. By the way, people, I can't see your faces because of the bright lights, and I feel really guilty that I'm not making eye contact. From my point of view, you'll all have great big dark pits where your eyes are.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Next question, please, Ashley.
My question from the audience is for Troy Crowder. How can Ontario become a model province that achieves much lower greenhouse gas emissions?
Well, just thinking about what Glenn was talking about and the laundry facilities at the hospital, there's a company in Sudbury called Northern Uniform, and they actually get their laundry shipped up to them from Toronto because they do it cheaper than the people in Toronto. But then we can't ship, we have to ship our laundry down to Toronto from the hospital because it's cheaper. So that's a lot of driving vehicles back and forth when just basically centralizing what you're doing. You know, we travel a lot in Northern Ontario. Some of it seems kind of redundant for the purposes of it. Why a contract for linen wasn't kept in Sudbury, you're not talking just dollars and cents, which I'd like to see those numbers, but the actual fact that you're driving up and down a highway with a diesel truck doesn't help. When it comes to dealing with our travel times out here, I look at from a Northern Ontario and a Sudbury standpoint, we have to travel great distances to get to whatever we're doing here, whether it's work or whether it's a sporting event, to go see family on the other side of the city. So it comes down to is trying to centralize and make things more efficient. And eventually, yes, we should move to a much cleaner source when our economy is ready to make that change.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Next question, please, David.
Question for David Sylvester. What would your party do to encourage the building of long-term care homes and affordable housing in northeastern Ontario?
Well, I would tell you that I don't know what the party would do, but I would certainly express a form of humanity for our senior citizens that give them a quality care that, you know, and as much quality of life as they can have. I heard Franz Jalina the other night describe how people that were married and are going into long-term care can't even be in the same facility, let alone, you know, in the same room, while they're sharing a room with somebody else and not their lifelong partner. So there's no humanity in that particular situation. As far as the funding is concerned, okay, we've got a big bubble coming. You know, there's that demographic of the baby boomers, which is going to put a heavy stress on our on long-term care. And, you know, keeping people in their homes is one way of, you know, helping it. There's a lot of different ideas that I've heard that would very much respect our elders and provide them with quality care, but we also have to help the people that are giving the care. You know, the PSWs, they're overworked, they're stressed like mad, you know. The idea that we can have stressed people providing quality care, you know, for our elders when they themselves have no care given for them in their employment.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvester. Next question, please. Tracy.
This question is for Troy Crowder. Do you support Doug Ford's position that the new government of Ontario needs to first appeal the WIN sex ed curriculum and then replace it with something more age appropriate that is supported by the parents of Ontario?
I think you should always consult people. You know, I learn a lot when I go and knock on doors and you find out what people are actually caring about or what's affecting their daily lives. I'm highly doubtful that that was a very across-the-board consultation with people. It really comes down to is our school system should be teaching the things that are valuable for life, for getting a job, for treating other people fairly, for balancing your life from a budgetary standpoint. Our curriculum in general, I think, needs to have a bit of a shift to it. So I'm all about reviewing with the people of Ontario and figure out what's important to them, because obviously our education system is not working for us very well. And more so, it's, lead by example. As adults and as parents, we might put a little too much stress on our kids. And as from a social media standpoint, we have some of the people in our education department that go online and bully and do other things to propagate propaganda. And you're the person who's supposed to be in charge of the education system. So for me, it's it has all to do with it. It has the consultation with people. Talk to people. Well, it has to do with what we teach kids. What we teach kids.
Thank you. All right, next question, please.
My question is for Glenn Thibault. The 2018 provincial budget included close to $500 million in new taxes for businesses over the next 3 years. What will your party do to lower the tax burden on businesses in Ontario?
So right out of the gate, we eliminated the capital tax for business, and we also lowered the small business corporate tax rate from 4.5% to 3.5%, making us still one of the lowest taxed regions when it comes to small and medium-sized enterprises in Canada. So we're going to continue to consult with business and listen to what they're saying. We've also worked with many organizations like the Chamber. We talked with the Chamber, and the Ontario Chamber has been working throughout the province on making sure that they share many of the programs that reduce the electricity rates. So that's another burden that we're helping small businesses on. And at the same time, we worked with the CFIB and received their Golden Scissors Award in relation to cutting red tape for small businesses. So yes, we've lowered taxes, we've eliminated the capital tax, and we're making sure that we're working with those larger umbrella organizations to look at red tape and reducing that component as well.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault. Next question, please, David.
For Jamie West, how can we use more nurse practitioners in long-term care to decrease the pressure on the emergency department of Ontario hospitals?
That's an interesting question. I don't recall reading anything about nurse practitioners. Primarily in long-term care, what we talk about is hands-on care. That right now what we have, and I was actually at Pioneer Manor this morning talking to residents there, and what we have is almost an assembly line of care where the residents are rushed into getting ready and dressed and out the door and fed as quickly as possible. What our party is advocating is for a minimum average of 4 hours of hand-on care for residents. In order to achieve that, we talk about personal support workers, and maybe registered nurses fits in the equation, I'm not sure, but our platform talks specifically about personal support workers, about hiring enough of them. And coming from a care background, I took child and youth work from Cambrian College, and one of the reasons that I'm in mining now is because child and youth work isn't affordable, similar to personal support workers. So you get into that field because of your heart and because you care and because you're going to provide the care that our families want for our seniors, our parents and grandparents. But if it's not affordable or sustainable, you end up having to leave what is your dream job and get into something that's more affordable. And so we need to increase the rate of pay for them and hire more of them and treat it like a profession that is valued because it's valuable to us and our seniors.
Thank you, Mr. West. Next question, please. Ashley.
My question is also for Jamie West. Businesses throughout Ontario continue to cite the regulatory burden as a serious barrier to investment and growth. This is especially true in Northern Ontario, where businesses are typically smaller and less equipped to handle continually changing regulations. What steps will your party take to create a more efficient and less onerous regulatory system in the province?
In terms of regulations, I don't know specifically what regulations they're talking about. I do know from earlier conversation that we were having around the table that small businesses were struggling with the changes of Bill 148 and how that affected people. And I talked about a poverty conversation. It's about bringing your workers out of poverty so they can buy things from small businesses. In Sudbury, we have more smaller micro businesses than large businesses. The majority of our workers are actually in these small businesses, and you need to be supportive of them. I think that when we talk about minimum wage and the squeeze that it created for small business, when we talk about minimum wage, a lot of people focus on it. I was speaking with a cab driver who said that minimum wage literally changed his life. That bump to $14 literally changed his life, and we need to keep that in mind, that we're not talking about imaginary people. We're talking about real families and the difference it makes for them. I think that also when you talk about minimum wage and the comments of too fast, too soon that came from the Conservatives, is you have to look back to when the Conservatives were in power. Minimum wage was raised 0 times in 8 years. That created the bubble that got us in this situation. We got this sort of sticker shock when we moved it up for small business. So you can't suck and blow at the same time and say too fast, too slow, but also create a crisis that puts us in a situation where we're forced to bump it up artificially instead of keeping up with inflation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. West. Next question, David.
For Glenn Thibault, what steps will your party take to encourage more people to start businesses and commercialize their skills and knowledge?
Through the NOHFC fund, we've really created a fund that's helping entrepreneurs get the dollars they need to start the whole process of opening up a new business. We just had the premier here today, and we were talking with the great Crosscut company here, the distillery that's making vodka and gin. But there are many, many examples of that throughout Sudbury, throughout northeastern Ontario, throughout northern Ontario, that the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund specifically creates to actually help start up and create more businesses. We also, through the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund, and in partnership with the Ministry of Advanced Education and Training, have also allowed for students, graduates coming out of college or university to receive $3,000 in startup funds to create their own small business, a summer job, so to speak, in terms of creating a summer business. But many of those businesses have evolved, and making sure that they can continue to then utilize funds to start up where then they don't need those government dollars, that they recognize that they can do it on their own and continue to grow.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault. Final question from Tracy.
This is a message question for Troy Crowder. Can you make sure that your leader, Mr. Ford, will not make it harder for ODSP, OW recipients looking for work?
I think Doug's philosophy on everything is the more we reduce red tape and bureaucracy, the easier it is for people to live lives. He's not about trying to hold people back. It's about keep people working and getting people active as they can be in the community. So knowing Doug, it's going to be about reducing all the complications to these problems and allowing people to have easier access to employment and not have to worry about filling out paperwork all the time.
Thank you. Next question, please.
My question is for Glenn Thibault. As a federal NDP MP and again as a Liberal MPP, you continue to raise the issue of gas prices and the idea of a gas ombudsman. After 7 years in public office, what changes have you brought forward as a representative to ensure fair gas prices to Sudbury and Northern Ontario?
So, as it was mentioned before, we've been trying to find ways to ensure fairness for gas prices, not only in Sudbury but all of Northern Ontario. So as soon as I became Minister of Energy, the first thing that I asked the Ontario Energy Board, which I talked about earlier, which is our quasi-judicial organization that looks at the economics of energy in the province, I asked them to do a report on why we see such volatility in the north. What came back from that report was that the market dictates the price, that there is a wholesale price, a rack price, many other plays in between until it gets to the pump and then the retail cost. They talked about the taxes that we have on there, and that the taxes, both the provincial and the federal level, are a large portion of the cost of gas prices. But there are choices that we make as governments, both provincial and federal, that take that gas tax and then invest that in municipalities to make sure that we can have public transportation. So just recently, the province and the feds here in Sudbury made an announcement of $100 million that will actually help our public transportation system move forward. All of that being said, every single one of us gets here in Toronto lower than us. And that's why we put in our Northern platform that we're going to have a watchdog to ensure that there's fairness.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault. Last question from David.
For Troy Crowder, what will your party do to expedite the construction of an all-seasons road connecting the Ring of Fire to provincial highways?
That's a fairly complicated issue. I have not been up to the area, but I've been told that it's very swampy and marshy up there, and they've been looking at whether rail will be easier or roads will be easier. That's the job of professionals to go up there and figure out the solutions. But first of all, we definitely need to have agreements with our First Nations people. It's their lifestyle, their homeland up there. So that would be the first consultation that we'll have to deal with before we figure out what roads are or what railways are going to be put through there. Opportunity comes in our natural resources, and we can use them the way that we all come to agreement on, and that's going to really depend on what they want to do with us in further developing it.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. And Tracy, last question.
This question is for Mr. West. The province is facing a $19 billion infrastructure gap, and Greater Sudbury is facing a $1.4 billion infrastructure gap. What will your party do to address these critical shortfalls?
Infrastructure is important to our community. It's very obvious in it. Some of the infrastructure that we're talking about, actually, a lot of people, when you think about it, you're thinking about our roads, especially in Sudbury, but as well as that, you're talking about our schools and our hospitals and the condition that they're in. What we're going to do in terms of education is we're scrapping the EQAO testing. This is the provincial testing that goes through every year, and teachers and experts by and large agree that we have a good testing system, report cards, and that primarily EQAO is a big cost that we pay in, and primarily realtors use it to tell people where the best neighborhoods to buy a home are. What we want to do with that money is put it back into the classrooms to fund your classrooms properly. And that includes repairs, that includes educational assistance, that includes teachers and capping classroom sizes. When it comes to hospitals as well, it's about funding them properly and having them work properly. We have, as we know, a PET scan system in place here, and it's taking longer than I think most of us would want to have PET scan in here. I live in the South End, and when I drive down Paris Street, the Thank You Sudbury sign is flapping in the breeze. It's been there for so long. A colleague of mine is related to San Bruno, and when he heard we hit the target, he was in tears. This man's in his late 50s. Very, very important to us. But it's about investing the money that we have and putting to use in the right places. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Thank you to the audience for your questions and the panelists for passing them forward, and thank you to the candidates for providing your answers. We will now hear the closing remarks from each of the candidates in reverse alphabetical order this time. You each have a final 2 minutes. The bell will sound when you have 30 seconds left in your time period. Ms. Wong, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. Consensus Ontario plans to start paying the deficit. Just remember, we have $311 billion. We're paying $12 billion a year just on interest. Our budget is $140 billion. So we will get the revenues from all revenue-generating Crown corporations. We will get it from LCBO. We will get it from OLG. That's where we're going to start. So that comes to $3.5 billion every year. We are also going to restructure the healthcare system. We are going to review evidence-based that these programs are working. Those who are not, we will repurpose those monies to meet the crisis right now. Emergency room crisis, we endorse the Registered Nurses Association platform of opening primary care centers so that people don't necessarily have to go straight to ER. We also want to back to basic schooling, wherein a math teacher is the teacher for math, not somebody who's doing art, not they're any lesser, but it has to be people that are teaching the proper qualification for being a teacher. Math should be taught by math teacher, and math is critical. Every day is math. We also look at long-term care and mental health capacity building. We have no staff. Every agency here is scrambling for staff. So don't gut frontline workers. Get it from bureaucracy, not frontline workers, because they make it happen for seniors. On diversification, we want to encourage immigration who are coming here as a business class immigration, that it is our leverage that they should develop in Northern Ontario businesses, and they should hire local people, because there is such a thing. You can come in here as immigrant, as a business class. So we want to encourage that development, and we say where you locate your business. So just remember that all these parties actually had been to election. They have a disorder as a nurse. They are called Implementation Deficit Disorder, IDD. All of these parties,
Thank
that's
you,
what they have.
Ms. Wong.
Okay.
I'm going to have
so
to stop
remember
you there.
that.
Mr. West, your closing statement, please.
Yeah, first I want to begin by thanking the organizers. I'm a worker at heart, and I want to thank the organizers for putting this together, and the residents for coming to attend this, because I know it's beautiful out, and I know in Sudbury it's hard to stay indoors when it's beautiful out. We've talked a lot tonight about what we're going to do or what we have done to make the community better, and honestly, I know that everyone on this stage loves this city. I believe in soft on people, hard on policy, and I know that we all want to do what's best. This election is going to be all picking someone who will stand up for a community in Queen's Park. It's also about who we want to form government, because we're at a crossroads. In Sudbury and across Ontario, it's harder and more expensive to learn and to grow and to operate a business and to raise a family than it ever has been. And that costs that people face, the students, the families, the seniors, they're spiraling out of control. Our hydro bills went up 300% under the Wynne government. And instead of fixing the problem, Kathleen Wynne lied and sold off more of Hydro One. This is why so many of us are feeling let down and betrayed and sold out. We're more than a little bit fed up with being told that our only choice is between bad and worse, and that hope is too much to ask for. I'm running to be your MPP because I'm fed up too. I know Sudbury deserves better. I know we deserve to get better. And I know that together we can make change for the better happen. Imagine an Ontario where hydro is public and we pay less for it. Imagine an Ontario where no one has to skip their medications or cut their pills in half because they can't afford it. Imagine an Ontario where every single person in our community can get dental care, and where our aging parents can live with respect and dignity. And for me and for Andrew Horvath and for the NDP, this isn't a dream, it's a plan, and our plan is called A Change for the Better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Mr. Thibault, your closing statement, please.
Thank you, Chair. I, too, also want to thank the organizing committee, the Sudbury Chamber of Commerce, for once again hosting this. This is the debate that everyone comes to, both in Sudbury and Nickel Belt, to talk about ideas and policy and to hear from all of the candidates. I also want to thank all of my fellow candidates for participating tonight, because ultimately the audience here, what you heard tonight, was everyone's ideas. And what we're trying to do, I think what everyone is trying to do is make, as Jamie said, our community better and our province better. And so now it's up to you. So I don't need to talk about any further about policy or idea, but it's now up to you, to the people that are watching through Sudbury.com, and this is being streamed, is you need to vote. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all talking about our ideas and what we want to see made better in our community and in our province. But unless people vote, it really won't matter. There are too many men and women who stood in harm's way as veterans to give us this opportunity to be able to sit here today and to be able to discuss with one another different ideas. I know young people out there are sometimes disenfranchised, don't feel like it's even worth voting. All I can say to you is hopefully today we've given you one glimmer of hope, one idea that you can latch onto and say, you know what, I'm going to look at that. And I'm going to make sure that when I look at that, that if it's a Liberal policy, if it's a Green Party policy, if it's a Conservative, it's consensus, if it's NDP, as long as you are actually engaged in making a decision, democracy is working tonight, and that's what I think we are a part of this evening. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault.
Yes,
Mr. Sylvester, go ahead.
Thank you so much, and thank the chamber as well. And I know these people here, the fellow candidates, are here because they want to be of service and they want a better world, and not just better Ontario, but a better world in general. And I would like to say that, you know, if we keep voting for the same things, we're going to keep getting the same things. And this is pretty much a true statement, you know, that we always do get the governments we deserve because we vote for them. However, you have now a couple of parties, one there, Mealy. I think that she's got a great idea of getting rid of the parties because it's not really that much of a party, you know, if you're not going along with the party. You know, the idea here is to give you an option to vote for none of the above and to actually send them a message, hey, and you want democracy, you want to give people a chance to vote, let them vote on some issues. You know, trust the populace to know what to do and to be able to make good choices. You know, right now we elect somebody to do it for us, and they have carte blanche. There is nothing you can do for 4 years. And then you elect another group that there's nothing you can do for 4 years. And then another group where you can do nothing for 4 years. So this is what they consider, you know, the solution is vote them out. Well, they've already done what they've done. And we have no way of actually effectively holding them accountable for, I guess, promises not kept. And so I wanted to encourage you to vote for something different, unless, of course, you're happy with what is. If you're happy, just keep voting for them. It's okay. You know, we'll all get what we deserve. This is actual factual. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvester. Dr. Robinson, your statement, please.
Well, thanks to my friends in the chamber and to all of you for this chance. David just said send a message. And what I'd like you to do is send a message to whoever wins that you're serious about the elephant in the room, that you're not satisfied with the kind of inaction that both the NDP and the Liberals are continuing with on climate change. This is the big life-threatening issue. Now, I've said that a bunch of times, so I'm not going to say it again. What I thought I'd do is suggest a way of dealing with all the problems of small business and bureaucracy. And so a Green government would create a commissioner of idiocy. And the commissioner of idiocy would be the first person you go to when somebody in the bureaucracy is hanging you up on some stupid rule. And the commissioner would be able to give a ruling about whether that particular obstructionism is okay. And if it's not, then behavior changes right across the province because you've set a precedent. Imagine 2 years after your commissioner's been working, how many of those horrible little annoyances that business people run into would be cleaned up. Okay, so vote for a commissioner of idiocy. I'll apply for the job if you like, once we win. Let me add one more point and finish. We need to re-amalgamate Sudbury. The Conservatives made a mess of it when they did the job. It's not working. It's costly. It's costing a lot more money. Part of the infrastructure deficit comes directly from an inane structure that was forced on a bunch of communities. We have to rework it. That's a provincial responsibility because they forced us into this. So vote Green to get re-amalgamation, or else to tell the other politicians that's what you want.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Mr. Popescu, your closing, please.
Okay. Money doesn't fix sin problems. God controls the climate, and he sees what's being broadcast up before his face off the satellites into our living rooms. You can fund theater, pornography. You can try to get rich on taxing dope, making liquor more available. You know, if tobacco's so bad, what's so good about marijuana? There's something wrong with the human will. You can't base plebiscites on something God calls deceitful above all things and desperately wicked beyond knowing. Folks, you got the answer. Dust it off, start to read it, and confess your sins before the Almighty who's destroying us. The younger generation is almost throwaway. You talk a little hypocritically when you talk about all these great incentive programs when you're promoting drugs, making liquor more available. I just want to mention one thing in closing. Whoever wins, will they please review the case of Rodney Newton, whose house was devastated by fire as a result of the blasting on the four-laning near the Nelson Street area of South Sudbury. He lost everything. The city, the province, the contractors have given him the runaround, and he's lost everything.
Thank you, Mr. Popescu. I'm going to have to stop you there. Mr. Crowder, your closing statement, please.
I want to thank everybody for coming out, the Chamber for having us here. Again, I got into politics because I love this city and I see the potential that we have here. There's so many things that we can do here to have an economy that allows work outside of the mining industry and the mining industry as well. We have a beautiful way of life here and we need to capitalize on that. Our party is trying to restore an economy and is trying to restore a budgetary deficit that is out of control. Proper management, proper planning, business-mindedness is what we are trying to bring to this government so that we can actually achieve prosperity. It really comes down to is, you know, when you say you're going to buy back Hydro One and you allocate the $250 million a year from your dividends, and you say it's going to take 10 years, it's not. It takes 25 years. That's the math. And when you say you're going to buy back an asset that people actually realize there's value to because now somebody wants it, it might not be the $6 billion you think it's going to be, so that's going to be inflated. There's many, many things, including calling revenue of $1.4 billion, which was actually an expensive $1.4 billion, which then throws the NDP budget into $7 billion of deficit a year. This is not going to save our economy. We need to plan efficiently and do things that make sense for this province and especially for Sudbury and Northern Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. In closing, I would like to thank the candidates for their participation tonight. Your candid responses to the issues that have been raised and for the candid responses to the issues that have been raised tonight. A special thank you as well to the panelists, Ashley Sauvé, David Boyce, and Tracy Nutt. Thank you so much. And a special thank you. And a special thank you to all of you for your questions, your very thoughtful questions. And we hope that you'll see some value in nights like tonight and pushing forward that democratic process. The Greater Sudbury Chamber of Commerce urges members of this community to go to the polls and vote on June 7th. We hope tonight's event has helped you in becoming better informed about the issues relevant to our community, and that you will keep in mind when casting your ballot on June 7th. Once again, I would like to thank our sponsor, the Sudbury Real Estate Board, for helping to make tonight a possibility. And we will be hosting an all-candidates event for the Nickel Belt riding on Tuesday, May 29th, beginning at 7 p.m. at Cousin Vinny's in Hanmer. We welcome all residents in that riding to join us. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and please have a very nice night. Thank you.